Wrestling with the Future is going back to the wrestling territories. Hello, everybody. I'm your host, Psychic Medium Angelo, joined by the Happy Haberdasher, my co-host with the most. The guy, he's the smartest guy in the room. If you don't believe it, just ask him. He'll tell you. Dan, the man, Sebastiano. How you doing, Dan?
I'm great. You know me.
Dan,
I'm
a good show
very
tonight,
humble.
Dan. I'm excited. I'm sorry I interrupted you. It's not like me to do that. But we have such a good show tonight. I'm so excited.
Oh, we can talk about the best era of wrestling. That's for damn sure.
Oh yeah, are you kidding me? We got a guy that has been around. Oh my God, yeah, I've known him for quite a few years now. You know, when his memory does kick in, which it does often, especially if there's a pretty girl around. You know, Scott Casey's the guy that you want to talk to, and he is our special guest tonight. Going to take us back to the wrestling territories. Back, what was it like to work the territories? So, and I know you and I've talked before, Dan, about why and how the territories died. Well, we're going to talk to a guy who very much, kept it alive, and especially in his area, I believe down in Texas, Southwest, working for the Von Erichs. Worked for Joe Blanchard. I know. This guy's been all over the place. So what do you know? So Dan, tell me what you know about Scott Casey. What do you know about this amazing guy?
Well, like you said, he's a name that pops up a lot when you look into any of the southern territories. You mentioned Fritz Von Erich, Texas. I didn't see much from Amarillo, but definitely a lot from the central Texas area.
Yeah.
Obviously, he pops up a lot in the South. I know, no offense, great respected man. Little before my time, being the youngin on the show. But when anytime I look up the old territory tapes in the South, even references as far north as Louisville and parts of Memphis and Tennessee, really just a big name all over the Southern wrestling.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And without further ado, young squire, let me bring in the master himself. Ladies and gentlemen, he has carved quite a niche for himself in addition to being a multiple-time champion, traveling all over the territories, making a name for himself. He is now added to his repertoire the title of book author, Scott Casey, One Last Ride. Scott, are you with us? How are you, my friend?
Absolutely. First of all, let me say, Nick Massey, who I just love to death, is my partner in all of this, and he created the book for me, and we collaborated on it for over a year, and it came out great. But let me say one thing.
Yeah.
If you are opposed to ribald thinking or words that are not supposed to be said a lot of times, then don't look at it. Because
exactly.
I said it from the heart. And I meant what I said, and I had a lot of fun doing it, and I was young and crazy and didn't give a you-know-what, and I enjoyed every bit of it. And the book just came out great. I couldn't have been more pleased with it. But like I said, if you don't like that kind of stuff, don't look at it, because it's going to have it in there,
Well, I got to tell you what, Scott. I actually spoke to Nick today. In fact, I spoke to him about 20 minutes ago. And I told Nick that we were going to talk about the book tonight and that I would give him a shout out. In fact, let me just tell you right now, Scott, while I got you on the phone with me here, we're going to have you back, and we're going to bring Nick on the show with you. And he's going to talk about how the two of you got together with this book, and as he's looking forward to it. And so I got to tell you, he's a really great guy. He did put a lot of work into this book. The book is called Scott Casey, One Last Ride. It's a one hell of a book. And like Scott said, if you're offended by colorful language, then don't fucking read it.
You're right.
We had
a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, Scott,
like it is, you shouldn't tell it, So
Yeah, well, we have no language parameters here, so feel free to get as colorful as you want, brother.
we can do that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You know, the last time I had you on the show, you were here with Manny Fernandez and Johnny Mantel.
Yeah, yeah. Two great
And,
guys, and both of them nuts. But I'm included in that too. So
yeah, yeah, and we were talking about. I believe what we were talking about was, and Dan, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we were talking about how the cowboy started in wrestling.
Mhm. Yeah, the Western gimmick.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Yeah.
uh,
So let's
well,
just refresh people, Scott. How
okay.
did how did that the cowboy gimmick make its way into the wrestling territories where you were?
Well, I'm in Amarillo, and I took a little small break from wrestling, and I get a call from Wahoo McDaniels, and he said, "What are you doing now?" And I said, "Well, I'm selling cars for a while, and this and that." And he said, "Well, we'd love to have you come down." He said, "How about if I fly you down and we'll pay you blah blah." And I said, "Great." So I went down to San Antonio and met Joe Blanchard again. A wonderful man, and I miss him terribly. And his son Tony was the big baby face down there. Well, we had a match, and after it was over, I got over as a baby face, and Tully got over as a heel. And Joe said, "We got to switch this." And he said, "You got to have a gimmick." I said, "Well, I used to raise quarter horses." And he said, "That's it. We'll call you Cowboy." And
There you
it
go.
stuck, and we had a hell of a run with it. It really was a lot of fun. That's how that's emerged.
Scott, was the cowboy gimmick overdone in Southern States wrestling? I mean, you had Cowboy Scott Casey, Cowboy Johnny Mantel, Cowboy Dutch. What the hell was his name? I forget. But I mean, you had everybody was Cowboy somebody, Cowboy this, Cowboy that. Was
Oh,
there
I don't
like
know.
Cowboy overkill?
Well, maybe it was. At that time, I was very bow-legged in one leg. I had wrestled in Florida, and I was in a ring that was real buoyancy, bounced around. And I did a leapfrog, and I came down, and it hyperextended the wrong way. And that was the beginning of the end of my right leg. And I'm leading up to something here with this. I'm having a brain fart here. Anyway, I went forever like that, and then after I retired, my leg just got to where it was killing me. And the 23rd of last month, I had a total knee replacement.
Right.
And I'm telling you something, boys. If you've never had anything like that, do everything in the world. I mean, wrap it, put a rope around it. It doesn't matter. It's a son of a bitch.
I'm sure it is. Well, I got news for you. You might be calling me a son of a bitch here in about 2 minutes. I got a friend of yours on the phone. Want to say hi to you. He's going to hang out with us tonight.
Okay.
Guy, a young man, a young Irishman, young Irish lad from up here in New Jersey wants to say hi.
Well, he's not young anymore, but listen, he's had some work done on his knees, his backs, and his hips, and it's all because of some baby faces that were in this business. Let me think for a second here. Scott, it's Davey O'Hannon.
Davey, how are you, my friend? When I heard that voice, I said, it sounds like him, but hell, Moby Dick was a minute the last time we talked.
It's been forever, man. Listen, let me do a little disclaimer here. I met Scott Casey in 1976 when I went to the Amarillo Territory. I had been in some other territories, and since then I've been. And I'm going to tell anybody that listens to this podcast, Scott Casey is the gold standard for a professional wrestler. This guy could have been a top guy in any territory that ever ran. He was that good. He was that good. Scott Casey took a back seat to no one. No one. That's how good he was in the ring. And it was such a treat for me to get down there. And the only part that wasn't a treat was Scott was the first guy I met when I got to Amarillo. I think I got there on a Friday afternoon. I pulled into the Center City Motor Inn, checked myself in, and somebody said, okay, well, TV's tomorrow morning, and then you'll ride to Colorado with Scott. Okay, I rode to, I think we actually flew. I don't think I ever, listen, I rode with Harley. And Harley, yeah, Harley made me nervous, but Scott.
That man would scare the scare the shit out of Dracula. I mean, he could.
Yeah, you're not kidding. So Scott, you can correct me. I think you had a Corvette at the time. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
had a silver Corvette.
Yeah, he had a Vet. So first of all, I'd been around a little bit, but I never actually rode in a Vet.
Right.
Man, I thought we were doing Back to the Future. I think we made Colorado Springs or Pueblo in about 16 minutes from the Amarillo TV station. I said, "Holy crap!"
Wow.
So that was my introduction to Scott.
A quick thing here. There used to be a wrestler by the name of Moose Morawski, and I first met him when I was started in Amarillo, and he said, "You're going to make $2,500 a week." I thought, Jesus, $2,500 a week. He said,
"No, Miles."
And boy, was he right. I mean, picture this: you leave Amarillo, you go to Colorado Springs, you go from there over to Albuquerque, to Mexico. You go down to El Paso.
Oh my
you go
God.
on over to San Angelo. Shit. I mean, you were delirious by the time you got back to Amarillo.
Yeah. Odessa, Abilene, back to Amarillo, and start again. Yeah. That's right.
That's crazy.
Davey, can you tell young guys today who haven't had the benefit of working the road, and what we mean by when we say working the road, putting the miles on the car, but 2,500, 3,000 miles a week sometimes, especially if you worked like a Bill Watts territory. That was 3,200 mile territory. Crazy stuff. Talk to these kids today about, and both of you guys, talk to them about
so simple.
putting the miles on, paying your dues through travel.
Well, that was one of the. It really was one of the unique things in the business that these guys will never ever get an opportunity to do. I mean, and this is not a knock. I see independent guys that talk about, well, we were on a road for 5 years. Well, once a week they went to a show 45 miles away. That's not on the road, because you tell a couple of jokes in the car is not on the road. You know?
Well, Bobby Duncan one time told me, he said, it seems like in a week, he said, we'll fill up the car every day. And he said, at the end of the week, we're going to change the oil in the car because 2,500, 3,000 miles was nothing.
Yeah.
And it's just like that old country song, White Line Fever. Oh my God.
No kidding. I mean, it was
so far out, Oh, pitiful. But those days are gone. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things that Dan and I talk about a lot on the show is how wrestling today can learn from the territory system. So I'm going to turn it over to Dan and let him pick it up because he got some stuff he wants to talk about. So Dan, go ahead.
Well, I want to start with kind of an understanding of what it was like being a territory wrestler. You worked you mentioned Amarillo. We talked earlier your time under like the Von Erichs and working for Fritz. If you were in, say, Texas, and you were going to get booked for a territory in New Mexico or Louisville, somewhere else, how does that go about? Obviously, in the age of cell phone, before cell phones, email, and easy communication, did the bookers reach out to you guys? Did the territory owners talk? Was it kind of an agreement? I'm going to work this day, and then the territory owners like, I want them for this day. How did you go about booking dates for yourself when, like you said, 2,500 miles, you might go into 4 or 5 different territories?
Yeah, the thing of it is, the bookers talk with each other, and obviously the wrestlers developed their reputation, and if they were that good, then they were needed, and they were wanted by different territories, and sometimes, the first time they said, well, we're going to fly you in. Hell, I thought I'd gone to heaven. Fly me? Wow. But that's just the way it was. The bookers would talk, and they'd say, hey, this guy he can carry the load. He can keep your territory going. And that's what they did, And back then, the owners and the bookers collaborated with each other to try to do that. A fresh face made money for each territory. So that's kind of how that went about.
And we also had a little unwritten rule, don't forget, that if you were going to leave a territory, you had to have the courtesy to give a notice. If you were working on top somewhere, you gave a 4-week notice, or if you were underneath or in the middle, you gave a 2-week notice. So when you gave your notice, or notice was given to you, then you had to reach out. You'd think about where you wanted to go if you could. And like Scott said, the bookers stayed in touch, and you'd ask someone, hey, listen, can you call Memphis for me, or can you call here or there? And they'd say, okay, well, they can get you going. I mean, I got booked in Amarillo while I was working up in the Maritimes in Canada, New Brunswick territory.
Wow. Okay.
So yeah, I thought it would be neat to take a long ride before I got to Amarillo, so I could take 7 long rides every night or every week. But that's where I came from up there. Actually, Terry was up there working. The NWA champ worked all over the NWA territories. So Terry was up there, and he said to me, he said, do you want to go down Amarillo for a while? And I was finishing up in New Brunswick, and I said, yeah, sure. And
Davey, would you do me a favor, my dear friend? Because I love the way you tell this particular story, and Dan has not heard the story, and I don't think that our buddy Scott has either. Would you please tell the story about your experience in Texas with a particular police officer and judge?
Oh, well, yeah, on Fridays we went to Lubbock, and I had come down, like I said, I came down from working in New Brunswick. Before that, I was working in New York. I had just bought a new '76 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, and so I'm on the way to Lubbock, which was like a night off because it was only 120 miles from, I think, right. Scott can correct me. It was only 120 from Amarillo, so that was like not even going anywhere. So I was flying down to Lubbock there, and I saw a Texas State Highway Patrol on the other side, and he had the big radar gimmick hanging out the back window. And I said, oh, crap, yeah, this is... So before I looked in the mirror, he was right behind me. He made a U-turn. And I pulled over and opened my window, and he walked up, and he kind of ducked down a little bit. This guy was about 40 feet tall. He looked at me, and he went, my wife doesn't like you. I said, oh... I said, well, this is one of the times I wish I had Scott Casey in the car with me, because I could have said, well, I'm sure your wife likes him, So could have got myself bailed out there. So he said, I said, oh, that's not good news, is it? He said, well, I like you bad guys. I said, whew, that's really great. Okay. So I actually invited him down to Lubbock that night, and he brought his wife and his sister-in-law and brother-in-law. But the other one about the judge that you were talking about, the night that Muhammad Ali and Inoki had their mixed match, and it was closed circuit in all the different arenas around the country, and each territory had something going on. And my tag partner at the time was Dennis Stamp. Rest his soul.
Oh, great.
Yeah, rest his soul. Dennis was like an all-night gas station man, never a dull moment.
Dennis Stamp, by the way, can be seen in the film Beyond the Mat.
That's correct. Yeah, that's correct.
With Terry Funk.
Yep. Well, Dennis was in the car with me, and so was Terry. And Terry said, come on, I want to get back to see some of this thing going on in Japan. I said, all right. He said, well, just go. We were coming back from wherever it was. He says, I know every cop in this area. Just go up this road. They're never around here. Don't you worry about a thing. So, I'm driving, certainly not driving as fast as Scott Casey drove me around, but I was driving, and about 30 seconds, I looked in the mirror, and there was all kinds of lights behind me. I said, oh, great. Okay, well, don't worry, because Terry knows everybody here. He pulled me over, walked up to the window. He said, well, you New Jersey boys really take advantage down here, going a little fast through our town. Actually, he said, you went through my backyard a little fast. And I wanted to say, well, I didn't notice your backyard, but I figured I was already in some deep shit. So now I was waiting for the tag off for Terry to help me out, and I looked in the back seat, and he was pretending to be sound asleep with his jacket over his face, and I could see he was chuckling. And I said, Terry, no, this cop or trooper or whatever he was said, oh, New Jersey, why don't you just follow me? So I followed him to some damn judge's house. He got this judge that came to the door with his pajamas and a jacket on. And I figured I was going to get a ticket. He said, no. He said, no. He said, you can pay the fine or you can stay right here. Well, I think it was like Tulia or Happy, Texas or something like that. I don't know. He didn't seem too happy to me. He said, no, you could pay this right now. Terry was still chuckling when I came out with my receipt for the fine that I just paid, and the warning from this judge to never come through his town again. Yeah. I really wish Scott was sitting with me a couple of times like that. But,
right? Exactly.
But we kayfabed that, we really protected the business then. We protected everything. And
well, that's a great segue. Davey, that's a really great segue. One of the things Dan and I talked about on the last show, and it ties exactly into what you were just talking about, and maybe you and Scott could chime in on this. We're talking about, going back to the territory days, when kayfabe was, not only the written rule, but it was the unwritten rule. Even Karen McDaniel, when she was here, was talking about, how she and Wahoo would even have to kayfabe out in public. Karen couldn't go have coffee with the girls. God forbid if she were seen, let's say, with Ric Flair's girlfriend or something. The guys would get fired based on what the girls did. So,
we protected it.
Yeah, and so let's talk about that. Because it's probably unlikely that we'll ever see a return to kayfabe, but how can we learn from that in today's wrestling climate from days gone by? Is there a way to not, you can't unring the bell clearly, but is there a way to kind of put a Band-Aid on it? Can we can we try to suspend our disbelief? Explain to Dan and I, what we can glean from yesterday and how we can make today better.
Well, I'll let Scott answer that, and then I have an opinion.
I don't think that you can, because it's all been exposed.
Yep.
But back up to the days when kayfabe was something. The first thing I learned, now I'm practicing in the ring with Dick Murdoch, Bobby Duncombe, Terry Funk, Dory Funk Jr., and Duke Myers.
Wow.
They were at least 4 or 5 inches taller than me.
Wow.
And it just, and that was the thing. They all said, if you're going to be in this business and you are going to be shown around and advertised and everything, you better learn what kayfabe is. He said, because if you don't, you may walk out of the ring and hit the dressing room and somebody knock the living shit out of you.
Yep.
It was just an unwritten rule. You don't fucking expose the business. I mean, we got into fights over it, and people would say, oh, that's all a bunch of shit. Well, the shit was on when they said it.
That's right.
And you just, that's what was the mystique of it all. Say, oh, he didn't hit him. And it's just like Johnny Valentine told me one time. He says, you may think it's all fake. He said, until you get in the ring with me. And I don't know how
exactly.
much you know about Johnny Valentine, but that son of a bitch would beat the living shit out of you. I wrestled him. I'm getting off the thing here, but I wrestled that man one time, and he wouldn't hit you in the face or in the groin or anything like that, but I guarantee you he would beat you up, and the people had to believe in him.
Oh, yeah.
And, that's what they wanted. It just could not. Back then, because it wasn't advertised like it is now. But not over the whole damn country like it is now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we were actually told recently on the show that, in fact, we had Andrew Anderson was here. He's good friends with Johnny's son, Greg Valentine.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe what he said was, I can't make you believe wrestling is real, but I can damn sure make you believe I'm real.
That's exactly what he said.
That's it. Mm-hmm. That's right.
That's exactly what he said. And you know what? We never, and the guys that Scott just named, for guys like Scott and I, they were sort of like the old timers in the business. They were established. And the other thing beside kayfabe that you learned is don't ever make a joke out of what we do for a living. And the reason is that the people believed because we believed. Because we believed. If I walked into a diner or a restaurant or someplace and Scott Casey or any of the other babies were sitting in there having dinner, we walked out. We walked out. There were, listen, if you worked for Eddie Graham in Florida and you even walked into a place and stayed a few seconds where the other guys were, you got fired. You got fired. We didn't even acknowledge each other. If we did walk into some place and it was unavoidable, we didn't even acknowledge each other. We just ignored them.
Davey, that's what our friend Karen was telling us. Her and Barb Goodish were here, and they told Dan and I the same thing, basically what you just said. They protected kayfabe to that level that even the wives and girlfriends were even included on it.
Well, yeah. Listen, I sort of lived a different life because I was a heel. I mean, Scotty was so unbelievably popular, and I'm not just putting him over. I mean, because this guy was, a master in the ring. I mean, just, you could watch Terry or Dory Funk or Briscoe or Steamboat. Listen, Scott Casey's name better be in there because
absolutely.
There weren't too many people that were better than Scott Casey. But what I'm saying is, as a heel, as a heel, I got a lot more crap than some of the baby faces did. And my answer, depending on how people approached me, was almost like Johnny Valentine's. I'd say to them, well, you want to find out if I'm a fake? There's one way you can find out for sure.
Exactly.
There's one way you can find out for sure.
Well,
go ahead, Dan.
Then let me ask you.
Hey.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, Davey, you're making me blush talking to me like that, but I appreciate everything you've said to me.
Well, it's true, Scott. It's absolutely true.
Well, I appreciate it, Dave. And the reason I was a baby face and I did things like a baby face and sometimes overkill with it is because of Lou Thez.
Yep.
I'm in California and I'm like the second or third match, and I walk out to the curtain and there's Lou and he's looking at it. And I walked up to him and I said, Lou, what are you doing? I said, God damn, you were 7 or 8 times world champion. What are you doing? He said, I'm watching the match. I said,
wow.
I know that.
That's wild.
He said, what he said to me, and it stuck forever. He said, I don't care if it's the first match or the last match. Watch them because you can always learn from them. You can steal somebody's gimmick or part of it.
Yep.
It will help you get over. And believe me, it did. It just... Yeah,
I always watched.
Yeah, and I thought,
and what an honor, what a thrill to have Lou Thez watch your match.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the guy was something else. I miss him terribly. And every day I wake up, I'm checking my pulse, make sure I'm still here. Because hell, I'm 73 years old now. That's 2 days older than dirt, but anyway, it's you just so and so died today. Really? Okay. Well, hell, Killer Brooks just died the other day, and I talked to him about a day before he died.
Yeah. Wow.
Well, I got a surprise for both you guys.
Okay.
You there, Davey?
Yeah.
Scott, I got a surprise for you. Got a gentleman here who, like all of us, started off as a fan and became quite the sensation among the nation. He's a young fellow that made his bones as an evil, dastardly, conniving Russian party sympathizer among the likes of Nikolai Volkov and ilks of that like. The gentleman, he's a dear friend of mine, and Davey, I know you know him, and Scott, I know you know him. It's our friend Nikita Breznikov.
Hey, Nick.
Hey, guys.
Nicky, how are you?
I'm so happy to be here. Great company. Very great company.
Wow, it's been a while, Nick. Great guy.
Nicky, we're talking about the territory days.
Yeah.
Back to the territories.
Gotcha.
Oh, absolutely. You get out of the car, your ass was as flatter than a board. But, I mean, that's the way it was. But, Nicky, it's been so long since I've talked to you. How have you been, my friend?
I'm doing just wonderful. Just keeping my head above the water, keeping COVID at bay, and just knocking it out, waiting for that bell to ring to get wrestling back where it belongs.
Yeah, well, like Scott said,
Amen.
That's going to be a stretch to get it back where it belongs. But you know what? As long as there's some of us left, and boy, there sure aren't too many of us left from those days. But we could certainly keep that memory alive. That's for sure.
Well, Davey, that prompts a question. How does the small but mighty few make enough noise to affect the masses? Are there enough of us left, to make enough noise that someone will listen?
Well, we can make a lot of noise, but guys like Scott and I got a suspicion are never putting those boots back on and getting in the ring. Man, I've had more tune-ups on my body than I care to even mention. Holy crap! Yeah. But you know what? Yeah, I mean, the problem I see right now, like Scott said, it's been so exposed, and what happened, I guess, with social media, television, cable, all that stuff, is the guys that are independents now, and there's some really fine athletes that are working in the independents. The difference is they never had Lou Thez watch their match.
Exactly.
Right.
That's the problem.
Wow.
And Scott will relate to this right away. When you were new in this business and you had a match and one of the old timers watched it, Art Nelson, here's an example. You'd come in and he'd say, "Kid, do you mind some constructive criticism?" Well, the answer is absolutely yes. Come on, yeah. What do you need to tell me? And he'd take you for a walk into the shower, and he'd say, "Well, listen, this is what your punch looked like, or this is what your kick, or why don't you try to do this, or turn this way, or whatever." That stuff's not happening now. So what these kids are now doing is they're watching the WWF or E or whatever the hell it's called now.
Yeah.
They're watching that on television, and as soon as they get in the ring, they're climbing up to the top rope and they're working the crowd. Well, wait a minute, man. You don't do that.
Exactly.
It's like you starts with a bang and ends with a whimper.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
So what they're doing, I've seen, and I really do not watch very much of it. I mean, I watch none of the WWE stuff or things like that now.
You're
but
not
I've
missing
seen some
anything.
of these. Yeah, I see some of the independent guys are going out there and doing starting off, with 5 or 6 high spots and starting off with 5 or 6 things that Scott and I would have used as a finish.
Finishers.
Mhm.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
Yep.
Nikki, we clearly can't unpeel the onion, and we cannot unring the bell. Does wrestling, Nikki, need a fresh restart, like a stop the buzzer and restart? Do we need to go back from square one and find out who the hell we are?
It needs an enema, without a doubt. Yes, without a doubt. Because look, it's so much, everything that's being discussed, right on, I agree. And you get these kids at these shows and they're jerking each other off. "Oh, that was great. Oh, yeah, thanks a lot for those ones." It's like, no, it wasn't great. You're not supposed to operate like that. Hey, we all screw up. We've all screwed up over the years and learned from it. But when you just sit there and let it go over your head because you don't know what the hell you're doing yourself, and you tell the other guy who knows even less, and now he thinks he's great, it's like, come on, man, we got to draw this in. Let's stop it.
Yeah, I mean, and the one thing, Nikki, the one thing that Davey just said, and I want you and Dan to kind of expand on it, is that, what he and you and Scott would have used, as your closing finisher, your go home move. These guys are now opening matches with them. Well, if your opening match, with a fucking buckle bomb off the top, whatever the hell they want to call it. I don't even know what these moves are anymore because they change every 10 minutes. But if your opening move is like this 5-star frog splash off the top rope, well, what the hell you go after that? What's left?
Exactly.
Well, listen,
what's left?
Guys
You
like
set
Scott and
yourself
myself.
on fire in the middle of the ring?
Yeah, well, you know what? In our day, and that really sounds old, but that's because we are old.
Exactly.
In our day, when somebody walked into a dressing room after a match, a couple of things might have been said. A really good compliment. Somebody said to you, "Boy, that sounded good." Okay, so that was a big compliment if somebody said that to you because they heard the crowd. And a lot of times, somebody said to you, "What did you do?" So if I said neck breaker, or Scott said small package or bulldog, well, the next guy knew not to do that. The next guy knew not to do that because we protected the business and protected one another. You see, but they're seeing so much of this other nonsense going on that it's not wrestling.
Davey,
There's no
somebody
wrestling.
needs to tell these kids that we don't need 500 super kicks in a row on NXT and AEW. Dan, go ahead. You and Nikki pick up on this one.
No, you're absolutely right there.
Because now
Davey.
I'm just sounding like a disgruntled old fart here, right, Nikki?
No, you're absolutely right that one of the things that hurts the product today is a lot of the high spot non-finishes, but also if you watch a typical show, you might have 3 or 4 matches in a row with nearly identical endings, the same kind of run in, the same kind of move set. And I guess the other thing, and maybe you guys can all kind of answer this, is one of the things I used to love about the territories, because I was a kid watching these tapes, is you could have these big moments, these big debuts, these big returns, whatever they were, because you could have somebody show up and take out the top baby face, or a heel come in and his opening match he wins a handicap in a few seconds because the crowd's never seen him, or maybe he does a move they've never seen before. Today, you lose that impact where nobody means anything. When you have a match that a power bomb off the top rope through 2 tables is not the finish, what do you do to make an impact when you first show up? So maybe explain that. Like, if I'm gonna debut as this big, I'll use you use the example here, Nikki. The big Russian wants to come in and squash the pie eating American. How do you do that if I just watched him earlier in the night kick out of a power bomb through 2 tables? Like, you can't. What do you do? What do you do to say, look, I'm the badass? I mean, I watched big bit. The last WWE pay-per-view just had a match where the stipulation was you lost by having your eyeball ripped out. And
That's a good idea.
They used props and special effects, and it looked terrible because I swear to God it was a painted fish bobber. But there was a wrestler on the ground holding his eye with his eyeball hanging out. Now, does he have to wear an eye patch for the rest of his life? And how do you come back from that? So let me have you guys expand on that. He's going
to take his fake eye, stick it on his pocket, go to Kroger, do his shopping, come home and stick the eye back in. What the fuck is he going to do?
See, here's where the difference is.
Go ahead, Nikki.
Can I interject something here? I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, Davey and Nikki and all you guys, but the wrestling today, okay, they give you a finish. All right, fine. But what happens if you've, like you said, you've done all this crap, and then you trip over your heel and the guy beats you 1, 2, 3? I mean, it's just whoever decided to make sensationalism the norm in wrestling had to be out of his fucking mind.
His name is Vincent McMahon Jr.
Well, listen, Scott will probably give you the same answer that I would. If somebody said to me, "Okay, listen, we're gonna go up there on that top turnbuckle in the corner, and I'm gonna get you up there, and I'm gonna power bomb you through those 2 tables down on the floor," I would have said to him, "Okay, let's get something really clear. You can go up to that top turnbuckle if you want to. I probably won't be there with you. All right, that's not happening.
Right.
That's not happening." And the other thing that I am positive Scott learned and I learned is, just let's slam a guy in the middle and you're going to drop an elbow on him. Well, you know what? Don't work the crowd for 30 seconds. Because I used to tell a babyface, you can play around with the crowd. When you look down, I'm not going to be there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to wait for you to do something. I'm not going to wait unless it's your finish, and then you knock me out or whatever. But they made it so unbelievable. Listen, up in New York at one of the Hall of Fame weekends, Bugsy McGraw, myself, and Don Fargo are watching the independent show, and Don Fargo says to me, "Who's the heel and who's the baby face?" I said, "I don't know. I don't have any idea." You got me on that one, man.
That's the problem. Nikki, let's talk about that. Defining the roles now. Davey brought up a good point, and Scott expanded on it a little bit too. But now you represent probably the last of that era. Just basically for you and I, for people to understand, you and I are the same age.
Yes.
So we're from the last, the tail end of that era that we're talking about. And of course, we both worked in the business, but you further deep inside than I at the time. But understanding a clear definition was the norm, to use Scott's terminology, the norm. Mm-hmm. Now it's not. There is no clear definition. There is no baby face. There is no heel. You understood who the good guy and the bad guy was. Sure. The Russian was the bad guy. That was it, right?
Right. But recently, when Vince tried to do that with the guy and the girl, I don't even know their names, it died. And I understand at a meeting he had a shit fit. It's like, why the hell can't we get them over like Volkov? You know why? Because nobody believes your cartoon bullshit.
Exactly.
You didn't make it. It's not believable anymore. Just like we're hearing, going through tables, doing all this other stuff. You should go out in an ambo then, Mac. Not get up after it's done, after the 3 count, and walk to the dressing room. That's bullshit.
Yeah, right.
It's not believable.
Scotty, it's not 1979 either, no. You know what I mean?
I mean, Scott mentioned Johnny Valentine. Johnny Valentine could have riots working an armbar.
Yeah, exactly.
With his face.
I saw John Valentine going to the ring, and he took one step up towards the ring, and the people went nuts. He stepped back down and then did it again. He had the heat before the heat was there. So, I mean, people have to learn how. They said it's a work. You got to learn how to work the match.
Yeah, you have to. You sure do.
Nikita,
have enough respect for your partner you're working with to sell for him, and everybody wins. This bullshit that I'm Superman, I get up after whatever you do. That's bullshit. Sell for me, and I'll sell for you, and everybody will come out on top, man.
Nikki, what's the word for that, Nikki?
It's because they're counting their dollars. Okay, wow, well, this did this, and the house jumped $1,000 or $2,000. We're going to do something else even more. They're just counting money. That's all they're doing. And you have guys giving you finishes that have never even been in the fucking ring.
There you go.
Yeah, but what's missing? Nikki, what's the word we're looking for? Psychology.
Right.
There you go.
Psychology.
There you go.
They don't know how to sell. They don't know why they're doing what they're doing.
It's not just to sell, Ange. It's listen, I was a heel. So in my mind, I was a heel. I was sneaky, I was vicious, and I was a coward. Scott, if I worked with Scott, which I did, okay, I was sneaky. I had to be sneaky to get the jump on somebody like him. So I was sneaky. When I got the jump on him, I was vicious. But then when Scott Casey had enough of that nonsense and started to make his comeback, he would not only out-wrestle me, that he would beat me all over, and I had to be a coward. Now, people hate a 250-pound, sneaky, vicious coward. Okay? Automatic heel.
But Dave, when the guy beating you is 6'7", and almost 290 pounds, it's believable. That was the difference. You guys made it believable. Now nothing's believable, Dave.
Well, we wrestled.
And
you know what? At the risk of me talking too much, because you guys just tell me shut up when you're ready.
No.
You know what? I came. Like I told you, I came down from Canada and went to Amarillo. And before that, I spent a lot of time in the New York territory, which is different than any other territory that ever was. And my first match was with Scott in Colorado Springs. And I think the booker promoter there was a guy named Herman Gust. And Herman Gust said to me, listen, we want you guys to do 2 out of 3 split the first two, and whatever happened the third fall, and I need about 45 minutes. And I said, oh, okay. Well, first of all, I just came down from New York. There wasn't a 45-minute match going on in New York in 30 years, and I had never worked in Colorado. And to keep up with a guy as quick as Scott, I mean, he was a wrestler. I mean, I was too, but about 5 minutes into this match, I went, Scott, I can't breathe. What the hell's going on? He said, you're in Colorado. That's what's going on. He said,
And
it's
I
a little,
said, grab a hold and hang on to it.
yeah, but the point is, we were wrestling. You see, we were wrestling. We weren't jumping off top ropes, and we weren't working the crowd constantly.
Exactly.
We were going to do 45 minutes in the ring. In the ring. Let's see any of these guys right now do Scott, how many 20 or 30-minute Broadways you do in your life? Oh, about 1 million?
I can't even count.
Well,
Yeah.
It's real funny you should say all that. I remember the first time I ever had a hour match, and I did it with Leo Burke from Canada.
My
Oh,
God.
wow. Yeah, great worker, Leo.
There's
And
a name from the
I
past.
went to Dory Jr. I said, Dory, I've never done one of these before. How do I work this match? And he gave me the best advice in the world. He said, when you go over 30 or 40 minutes, he said, and you go to an hour, he said, make it like an hour. Make it 6 10-minute matches. And it worked out great. Did it with 40 minutes. I did it for 30 minutes, I mean, it just works, I mean, but today, you're not going to get guys that can do that. They wouldn't know hello from Sikkim as far as trying to do an hour or 30-minute match.
No,
and I'm sure Scott had the experience. Listen, I got to work with Dory, who was certainly a legend, and Dory and I think we did 45 or an hour in Hereford in that little building down in the Bull Barn, and I said to Dory, whatever you want to do. You know what? He did a headlock for almost 45 minutes. The place was going crazy. He was so good because he was wrestling. We were in the ring wrestling. No nonsense, no standing on the top rope, no tables, no chairs, none of that stuff.
If
in the ring.
But you'll never see it again.
Nope.
I hate to say that, but you will never ever see it again.
Nope, you're right.
No, you nailed that. If we can expand on that, when I was talking earlier, I mentioned how you can't really get an impact anymore. Nikita, I want to bounce back to you. You look like you had something you wanted to add to that. I want to give you a chance to speak here.
No, go ahead. I'm listening, and I agree with the experts without a doubt, because wrestling was always what people say was on the marquee. That's why when you could go to an arena and watch Bruno Sammartino, you believed in him. I mean, people would probably almost kill you if you badmouthed him or if you rooted against him, because he was so loved, because he was believed. Now, talking about these kids today, too, that you watch. Okay, you say you went to the Hall of Fame presentation and you watched the indie show. It's like you see them do all the high spots, and I did that recently at Cauliflower Alley last year, and I said to somebody, you're not going to last long in this business if you're going to do 10 high spots, because obviously you're not working every night. If you work every night, you're going to do maybe one high spot, a couple of, every third night or so. You're not going to do 10 and 20. Your body can't take this. What the hell are you? I said, look at these people out here. Name me 20 of these people sitting out here. Listen, I don't know their names. I said, that's right. And in 2 weeks, they're not going to know your name. But all that shit you did in there tonight, you're going to be feeling it. You got to cut it out.
Hey, absolutely.
Well,
Here's the thing, guys. The days of the 20, 30, 40-year career are over just because of what Nikki just said. These guys don't understand that they're taking years off of their career. They're taking more years off their career than their career is going to last. I got news for you. Look
I'm
at
not
a
sure.
guy like Dan. What's his name? That Omega guy. The one I can't stand.
Kenny Omega.
Kenny Omega. how this guy has survived this far and this long in the business is beyond me. I don't know what his secret is, other than maybe he's just not smart enough to realize that his career is going to come to a crashing halt.
Well,
But go ahead, Dan, because he's killing
Kenny
his career.
Omega. Kenny Omega, he cheats fate because he's not actually a wrestler. He's just a stunt man who goes out and plays wrestler. So
thank you.
His moves look terrible, but they're not. He almost saves the impact on his body because there's no impact on his opponent either.
Well, he needs to let Nikita do it. He's an actor. He can.
I mean, I think about if I may speak on this.
You're far more talented than he is, Nikki.
I hate to speak like this because it makes I try not to make anybody feel old, but I remember watching evil Russian Breznikov when I was a kid, and if the big Russian got his hands on you, you were toast. There is nobody today anywhere in any promotion on this planet that I look at and go, damn, I'm genuinely scared of that guy.
Okay, now,
Exactly.
now, Davey, you'll know George the Animal Steel from the East Coast days.
Yep.
And all he had to do was look in your direction, and he would clear out a whole area, a whole section.
Yeah, there were guys like that. The original Sheik was like that also.
Yes. Well,
I'll tell you what, and not for nothing, but we just had Barbara Goodish, and her husband Bruiser Brody was the same way.
Mm-hmm.
He instilled fear just by people. All you had to do was know he was coming down the aisle on your side of the arena.
That's because the people believed,
Exactly.
and that's because we believed. We never made a joke of it. We never stepped out of character unless we were alone by ourselves.
Right.
All right. And like Scott said, that's not coming back. It's killed. We protected it so much that it was just, it's never going to be done again because the opportunity isn't there for them. There's no territories.
Well, I think Nikki's right. I think the business, Davey, needs a giant enema. It needs a good flushing out. It needs a good cleansing, and then we need to hit the reset button. We really do.
Well, until you get some promoters, until you get promoters that set up territories, that's not going to happen.
Well, we're going to talk about that right after the commercial break, and I'm going to let you and Nikki have at it. But right now, Dan's favorite part of the show is where he gets to do our. Shut up, Dan. I'm going to move out the way so we can hear and take a look at our sponsor. Dan, take it away.
Well, as Angelo mentioned earlier, it's fitting that we have a bunch of tough men on board because our sponsor is Manscaped.com. Manscaped.com is the leading supplier of man grooming needs, especially in today's summer weather. I know anybody that's been out there and when it hits 100 degrees, if your boys aren't taken care of, they are not going to be comfortable. So Manscaped.com, use promo code Wrestling Future for 20% off your order. Manscaped currently has numerous supplies, including the Lawnmower 3.0, which is the #1 ranked shaver. They have a ball deodorant, a refresher, a pair of underwear that is the most comfortable you'll ever wear. And I'm not saying that lightly or because they're our sponsor. I genuinely mean it. So Manscaped.com, promo code Wrestling Future for 20% off because Manscaped.com, your balls will thank you.
Absolutely. You see what that says right over there? Manscaped, balls to the walls.
There you go.
Answer. Move.
Just as an added bonus, Manscaped has as Dan mentioned, as a ball deodorant. There's an interactive feature to that. You can have your wife apply it. We call it the testicular tickler. And
great.
You like that, Davey?
That's good. Oh, baby. I can't see Scott and I doing these promos on a Saturday morning in Amarillo for some reason.
Wait till you see the video. You'll love it.
Well, I'll tell you what. Anybody from the territory days that had to step in the ring with Dutch Mantel would have wished they had a Manscaped back then.
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so, that's for sure.
Before we did the commercial break, Dan, you and Nikki were were speaking. Go ahead.
Well, what I wanted to hope you could expand on is think about the product today. It's terrible. I'll admit that. The problem with kayfabe being gone, especially in the social media age, you mentioned the failed attempt at a Russian villain a couple years back. The problem with that was he was Bulgarian and his wife's American, and everybody knew that because they were both very active on social media. And there he is on TV waving the Russian flag, and then 10 minutes after Monday Night Raw's off the air, he's tweeting him and his wife at a restaurant.
Dan, can I interject for a minute?
Of course.
Can I interject for a minute, Dan?
Yes.
Nikki, would you do me a favor? Would you please address the social media aspect of what Dan is exactly talking about right now?
Well, yeah, they hit the nail on the head. First of all, you say I never watched them. I watched the night they tried to bring Nikolai in to give it an injection, and Nikolai said it's not going to work. The Russian flag, if you don't have the hammer and sickle Soviet flag, what the hell is that other bullshit? Nobody cares about this Russian flag. They want the Soviet flag. That's where your heat's going to come from.
Yep.
And so, okay, I agree 100%. You can't be yakking your face off on social media, and then how do you believe it? You look, if you did that with the contract, okay, we talked about acting a little bit ago. If you did that, if you had a movie coming up and you were out there blabbing your face, you know what? They'd probably fine you, disqualify your contract and say, look, you violated the terms, non-disclosures, things like that. Shut the hell up, man.
Exactly.
If you want to live this character, live the friggin' character, and that's it. If you want people to jerk you off, you want to get your head rubbed or whatever, then fine.
Yeah.
The wrong business then. Either
if it works for somebody like Nikita Breznikov, because Nikita Breznikov is an actor. He does television and he does movies. If you're a professional wrestler and I even hate using this word, Nikki, when I talk about wrestling, but if your character in wrestling is the Bulgarian Brute, I believe is what they called Rusev, the Bulgarian Brute.
Yeah, after they had to admit he wasn't
and
Russian.
You and your wife are using, semi-Slavic dialect on the air, but yet you come off and now you're speaking perfect English.
All right.
How am I supposed to believe that you're a fucking Bulgarian Brute if you sound like you're from Minnesota?
It's never going to work. Exactly.
And it didn't work from day one, Nikki. And it's not working. Davey, give me some heads up. Get into the mind of the psyche of.
Well, here's the heads up
of today's
for Scott.
wrestling.
Here's
the heads up for Scott and I.
We didn't have characters. We didn't have storylines. All we were wrestlers. Period.
I was waiting for somebody to say that.
Period. That's all. We were wrestlers. Okay. I was a heel. Scott was a baby, but that's neither here nor there. We were. If you asked us to describe ourselves, we were professional wrestlers. We were proud of it. We protected it. It was an honor for us. It was a treat for us to be able to say we were in a ring with a guy like Luthez or Dory Funk Jr., or Terry, any of them, or Scott Casey. That was plain and simple. We were wrestlers. Our guys could walk into some place and somebody would say, "Oh, the wrestlers are here. The wrestlers are here." There was no character.
Yeah.
There was no character. There was no storyline. That was that, man.
Davey,
and if you want to call it a character,
with you?
Yep.
Can I share something with you, Davey, and
Sure.
and Scott and Nikki and Dan? Here's what it's going to take. Nikki said that the business needs a giant enema, and it does for sure. Here's what's going to happen, though. I think there is a way to go back to the days of kayfabe and believability. And here's what it's going to take. And call me crazy or out of my mind or fucking brilliant, which I probably am. Ask Dan, he'll tell you. Here's what it's going to take. and this is as simple as it gets. It's going to take for wrestling to be a 100% complete shoot for people to believe again. But here's the problem. If you got two guys that are shooting on each other, like back in the 30s and 40s when shooters could stretch you and shooters could hurt you, you're going to have these cynical fans today. Somebody's going to say, oh, it's a work. Oh, did you see he pulled his punch? Oh, did you see he did blah, 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 blah. It seems to me like the business is completely fucked coming and going. I don't know what it's going to take other than, to take that giant, enema hose and shove it up somebody's ass, to clean it out,
Well, listen, Eddie Graham had an answer for that when somebody would Eddie Graham loved doing this stuff in Florida. He had a guy down there named Nelson Royal, who was kind of he didn't look like a tough guy, but oh brother, was he ever.
He was a shooter.
He sure was, and he had Bob Roop down there, and on a few occasions, fans would say, "Oh, I can do that shit. I can do that. That's no big deal." Yeah. And Eddie Graham would say, well, you know what? You could probably make some money doing this. Why don't you come down to Tampa?
Come down to the arena.
Early in the afternoon before we get started. Maybe you could have a little workout with somebody. Well, we'll let you start with this. We'll let you start with this old timer, this referee named Nelson Royal. And Nelson Royal would tie somebody in knots. Bob Roop would hurt them. You see, Bob Roop would take a shoulder out on you.
And if you want to see that, Davey, if you want to see that demonstrated, there is an absolutely priceless, precious video on YouTube.
Oh, is that right?
Of Nelson Royal. I'm not even shitting you. This is straight shoot. There's a video on YouTube of Nelson Royal and Bob Roop making a grown man cry and leaving the arena because he legit thought that he could beat Bob Roop.
Oh, yeah, great idea.
Oh, yeah. You want to do that with an
Evidently, nobody told him about Bob beating the bear one time.
Yeah, I heard that story, Scott. Scott, why don't you tell that story?
Please, I like to hear that.
I don't know. I wasn't there for it, but I heard about it. He
Tell us what you heard.
Damn bear. Now, how the hell do you beat a bear? How do you pin a round-shouldered bear? But he did.
Yeah, I mean,
last time I saw Roop was at the gathering in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I asked him about it. He said I was scared to death. He said I guess I did it out of fear, but there's no way I'd get in there with an animal.
Did he get the bear drunk or what happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, I worked with the bear a couple of times. He beat the crap out of me every time I worked with him. Jesus, right. It's a freaking bear.
It's a bear. Dan, who was it we just had on the show, Dan, that was talking about the bear?
Oh, that was who was that?
Ron Fuller.
Yeah.
Ron Fuller. Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard this one. What they used to do, you're going to love this, Davey. What they used to do, Ron Fuller's father used to wrestle a bear, and his grandfather, Roy Welch, used to wrestle a bear.
Mm-hmm.
What they would do to get the bear agitated, they would slap honey on some guy's ass.
That's right.
Do you know the story then, right?
Sure do.
Okay. They would slap honey on the guy's ass, and then after the bear beat the shit out of the guy, they would give the bear a Coke, and he would drink the Coke.
Yeah, well, that was part of the gimmick for the bear. He would
exactly.
He would take a bottle of Coke and hold it and drink it up.
Exactly.
Yeah. Tuffy Truesdale is the guy that had the bear, and really early in my career, Vince McMahon booked me at a little carnival show in New Jersey, actually. And when I got there, and don't forget, when you first got into business, you weren't 100% smart. There were things you still didn't know, and the reason for that was, let's see if you have enough respect to be in our business. Let's see if you have enough respect to be in our business. Anyway, they said, look for Tuffy Truesdale, and I did. And he explained to me, he says, did you ever work with the bear kid? I said, what kind of bear? I'm like, a real bear? He says, yeah, it's real. Here it is now. And it was Victor, the bear. And,
yeah.
Yeah, I thought, since, I was an amateur, I know how to shoot. Yeah, okay, let me shoot for this bear's leg. Oh, that's a really good idea, because the bear's leg's only about 8 inches long, its back leg. And when I did, he just laid over the top of me. I was in a crunch position, and in about 10 seconds, I was yelling at Tuffy Truesdale, get this thing off me, I can't breathe. What do you, he stunk. I mean, holy crap.
Nikki, do me a favor. Nikita, tell the story while we're talking about animal stories. Tell the story of Bruno wrestling the monkey.
I don't know that one.
You don't know that one?
No.
You mean I know
this?
You mean I know one that you don't?
Yeah.
It was an orangutan. That's what it was.
There you go. Thank you, Davey.
God.
Yeah. Davey, tell that story.
Well, it was really early in his career, and Bruno was kind of being blackballed, by Vince McMahon, and someone offered him some money. Hey, listen, you want to make a couple hundred, or whatever the price was, I don't recall. But Bruno told me the story himself. I said, well, wait a minute. I said, you actually got in a cage with this thing? He said, yep, I did. He was all scratched up. He was, but he beat it up. But he didn't let this thing take over. I mean, Bruno, he was a mess when it was done. He said, I had cuts and scratches all over me, but I lasted whatever the amount of time was that they wanted him to be in there, and he did.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was
You
wild.
want to hear the payoff? You're going to love this shit. The payoff was $50.
Is that what it was? I don't know.
$50.
I don't recall.
And that orangutan scratched the fuck out of him.
Yeah, it really
was
messed him
jumping.
up.
It jumped all over the cage. It was swinging all over the bars and shit.
Yep.
Oh my God, that was crazy. For $50. Well, it was during that time when, like Davey said, Bruno got blackballed by Vince because he didn't want to play with Buddy Rogers. So he said, well, "Fuck you, I don't need the money that bad." So he worked a couple carnival shows and wrestled this monkey, this orangutan, for $50 a pop.
Yeah, he was just getting ready to quit the business.
Yeah, he was going to go
getting
back into construction, right, Davey?
Yep. He was just getting ready to quit, and Frank Tunney called him to come up to Canada, and that's what renewed Bruno's career right there.
Amen. Absolutely.
And that's why Bruno, even after he made it back to WWF, he would go every Sunday show up there to Toronto.
Yeah, Nikki, he was very loyal.
Yes.
He was very loyal to Frank Tunney. Absolutely.
Yep, that's for sure.
Daniel, for sure. Go ahead, my friend. You got it. You take over.
Well, then I have one question. Actually, just more of a personal note. Scott, when you had a stint in the WWF in the late, I think it was 88 to 9, in the late 80s, early 90s. One of the bits you did was you teamed with SD Jones, and Conrad Ephraim's he was one of my favorites growing up. I actually had the pleasure of meeting him on numerous occasions. So I'm just curious, as a fan, do you have any good stories related to him?
To who was it? I'm sorry.
Conrad Ephraim wrestled under the name SD Jones. You tagged with him a couple of times.
I don't know. I guess my mind's gone blank on me because I remember the man, but I don't remember wrestling him. I'm sorry.
It's the match that Dan is talking about is actually on YouTube. It's Cowboy Scott Casey versus SD Jones, and I believe it was either at the Philadelphia Spectrum or Madison Square Garden.
Huh.
I believe it may have
I
been.
worked both of them.
Yeah, I think it might have
I was-
been. I'm wanting to say the Spectrum because SD was a Philly guy. He was he was from Philly, and he always worked the Spectrum shows, right, Nikki?
Yeah, absolutely. He always went over usually too in Philadelphia. Yes.
Yeah, that was his hometown.
That's
Well,
where
except
soon found him. He was a
Ex-
postal guy in Philadelphia. That's right.
yeah, and he would, like you said, he would usually go over, except for that one time when the referee was racist against him. Remember that?
Dusty Feldbaumer, yes.
Dusty Feldbaum.
Oh yeah. 2
Dan,
months.
did you ever hear that story?
No, this is I want to hear this. This is fascinating. This was
I'll
was this
let
part
Nick
of the
tell
script?
the
Or?
story, but you got it. We have to backtrack to Baltimore first,
Okay.
and then Philadelphia. Go ahead, Nikki. Tell the story.
He was wrestling a guy named Joe Mascara. Now, anybody here, Joe Mascara? Davey, you remember him, I'm sure.
Oh, I think I do, yeah.
Yes. And so it was like, okay, SD's going to murder this guy. But Feldbaumer, he kept giving him the 1 and 2, and SD's getting up. It's like, come on, man, what's up with the count here? What's up with the count? And then, of course, it gets reversed to Mascara. And 1, 2, 3, and it's like, whoa, what's going on here? So, at the SD was good with the headbutt. He puts down Mascara, boom, 1, 2, 3, he's out the door. Even after the match was over, SD was still going. It's like, hey, come on, man, what are you doing to me here? And I believe, if I remember correctly, which I usually do, because Dick Graham used to do the color for the Spectrum for the Prism shows. That was the cable network there.
Yeah.
Vince Jr. would do the color commentary. Even they mentioned it. It's like, hey, come on, man, what's going on here? Why does this guy not like SD? This is pretty blatant here.
Yeah. Little sidebar about Dick Graham. He was my broadcasting teacher.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. Another
Wow.
side note about the Spectrum Wrestling. I used to work for Cal Rudman in the music industry.
Wow.
Yeah. And I've mentioned this on the show many times. I've only done 2 things in my whole life: wrestling and music.
Now,
And worked for my father's restaurant.
Now, Cal Rudman, he was a very benevolent guy. He and his wife, they put a lot of money into different benevolent organizations.
Oh, yeah. Cal and Gloria Rudman. Yeah, absolutely.
And Dick Graham, he did a good job. He was smart, but he was naive because he could get fooled a lot of times by things.
Well, I want to tell you something about Dick Graham that nobody knows. They never smartened him up.
Really?
They never smartened him up.
He had
to learn trial by fire.
Mm.
He would
Well,
lean
people
over Gorilla
that didn't
Monsoon
get
every
in the
now and
ring
then go,
didn't get smartened up. There were very few that got smartened up. A referee,
Yeah.
everybody. That's part of what we were talking about before.
Well, here's the thing, too, about the referees. You got the referees now. Here's another thing about the territories that are different than today. And we can all talk about this. Back in the day, when athletic commissions, and Nikki knows where I'm going with this, when athletic commissions ran wrestling shows and boxing, okay, you had state licensed officials that would officiate wrestling matches.
Yes.
A lot of these guys were already smart to the business. Some of them weren't. Okay. But then you went and you declared yourself sports entertainment. Now you don't need the state. Now you can hire your own referees to play along with your shtick, right?
Yes.
Mm.
So now the difference between you got a guy that's maybe halfway smartened up, but he's still playing by the rules because he works for the state, and a guy who works for the company who knows it's bullshit. Dan, take me there. You and Nikki start me off, and we'll go Scott, and we'll go Davey.
Well, I think where you're going with that is the evolution of the product, or I should say de-evolution of the product.
Well, particularly with regard to the referee and the exposing the business aspect of it.
Yeah, as Nikki mentions, Nikita, you mentioned one of the spots. You talked about how you would. It's obvious that spots are set up. when the referee is involved, when he's an employee in the company, when he's part of it, it becomes more and more obvious that he's looking over his shoulder, he's waiting. Or how many times have you seen, a manager jumps on the ring apron and the referee's got his back turned for 45 minutes, and it's like, I know you're hearing this noise. How are you not seeing what's happening behind you? And referees become, and let's be honest, the professional wrestling referee is the dumbest, most fragile human being to ever walk the earth. I've never
You're
seen
making my point for me, exactly.
I've never seen somebody.
The reason I'm starting to laugh, and Davey O'Hannon, you guys will remember Lou Super as the referee.
Oh my God, yes.
This guy, I don't even think he knew what the hell was going on. Smart, not smart, whatever.
Nikki,
yeah.
the Lou Super was all of 5'3", 250 pounds, right? Am I lying? He was a little butterball.
The worst
Lou
that ever
Super
lived.
was a little guy. He was old back then. I think it was 100.
Yeah.
Well, one time they put him on Spectre. They did an interview after a match that he had just called, and it's like nobody knew what the hell he didn't even know what he was saying. This guy was just gone. But see, now what you're saying, let me take it back another step. When Superstar beat Bruno, it was done in Baltimore because by the State Athletic Commission rules, when the referee raised a hand, that's it. It cannot be changed even by going to court, any kind of thing like that. So it was like, okay, good. We'll get it done here. Bruno saves face. Superstar puts the feet on the ropes. Plus, the title changes in Baltimore, so it's not always Madison Square Garden. So the fans now can think they'll actually buy a ticket and see a title change. So it worked out beautiful. But that whole stipulation with the Maryland State Athletic Commission there, it was like, boom, this thing is final. It's done. So that did make sense.
And fast forward to last year, just to point out how seriously Baltimore takes their shit. The match that AEW did with John Moxley and Chris
John
Jericho.
Moxley and Kenny Omega.
Oh yeah, that match was done in Baltimore for a reason, because when the Baltimore Athletic Commission says this match is to the finish, there's a winner. There is absolutely a winner, and just like Nikki said, not even a court is going to overturn it.
Yep.
Because it's final. It's final. So that was just a sidebar. Let's talk, Davey and Scott. Let's chime in on that. Let's talk about how announcers and referees and other personalities. If people don't understand that wrestling is more than just two guys in the ring. There's a supporting cast of people. You've got the play-by-play guy, the color guy. You've got the ring analyst. You've got the referee. You've got the commentator. All these people play a part. They all used to be individual people from different entities. Now they all work for the same company. Talk to me.
Go ahead, Scott. I got my answer all ready for you. See, Scott,
I'm kind of circling back. Okay.
Yeah.
It takes everybody to make it work. It really does. I mean, like I always told the referees after the match, thanks for your help. I remember there was an Angelo Martinelli who was in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the guy saved my bacon 2 or 3 different times when I was young, and I still didn't know hello from Sikkim, and I appreciated that. And also, you've got the announcers, and it's he can't come up there and be half dead and try to put the match over or whatever.
Oh, exactly.
He has to expound on what's going on. I mean, here's Davey O'Hannon, the man that beat 9 guys in a row, blah, 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 and Scott Casey, and it just, if they don't put us over, then who is? Except us.
Exactly.
And hell, we can't do it. All we can get in there and work and try to make it work, And, nowadays you've got announcers, you've got 2 or 3 guys sitting at a table, and they're talking over what's going on, and you got the referee, and you got the matches, it's so different. It is so different from what it used to be, and it sometimes confusing, sometimes not, but it's a hell of a lot different than it used to be.
Scott, I have a question for you while I got you here. I've asked Davey O'Hannon this question when he was here before. I've asked Nikita Breznikov this question when he was here before, and both of these guys have been here several times. They're good friends of mine in the show. My question for you, Mr. Casey, my dear friend, what's the difference between getting over and being over?
Couple of things. The booker or the guy who's making the matches up, that's part of it.
Yep.
And your ability to know when to sell, to know when to come back, and know when to, what's that say? Know when to, oh hell, I can't even think of it now. But it's, it's a combination of things. If you're not put over by the announcer, if you're not put over by the people, then how the hell are you supposed to get over? Right?
Stop right there, Scott. I'm going to stop you right there. I have asked this question, and Dan, tell me if I'm bullshitting. I have asked this question to every guest that's been on the show, every single guest. Yeah. Scott Casey is the only person that just gave the answer between getting over and being over.
Yep.
You can have the ability, you can have the look, and it's like somebody once said, Sputnik Monroe told me one time, he said, kid, you look good, you've got the ability, but can you talk? If you can't talk on that stick, you're dead in the fucking water. I don't care who you are. If you weren't Hulk Hogan or whoever, you can't get over. And to stay over, you got to be fresh and with good ideas every time you get on that stick. Are different ways of making the match work.
Dan, how many times have I asked that question?
At least 50, and you've gotten a different answer every time.
Every time.
Well, let me tell you something. First of all,
Davey, he's not even shitting. That's
Scott,
for real.
Scott and I were not entertainers. That's number one. We weren't entertainers. We were wrestlers. Okay. We used to have an expression. It takes three to tango. Okay, so you had to have a good referee because that's part of it. Like Scott said, if you don't have an announcer that gets the people into it a little bit and adds some excitement, that's part of it. Okay, that's part of it. Now,
that's a big part of it, sure.
A guy like Billy Graham. Now, Billy Graham's my friend, so this is not a knock. Billy Graham was not a great worker in the ring. Was not a great worker, but Billy Graham had a look that helped get him over. And Billy Graham, like Scott said, could be on that stick, and you could listen to him all night.
He could talk his ass off.
He was great to listen to.
Oh man,
Terry Funk, Ric Flair, Randy Savage, all great on the microphone, man.
Yeah,
that was a huge part of it. That was a huge part of it. Yeah, and you say,
first
well,
time.
Is everybody smart? Well, listen, for us, we didn't worry about if a timekeeper or somebody outside the ring was smart, because when Scott Casey bulldogged you or I put a neck breaker on, the referee was in there to call it straight. So we knew what we were going to do. Shame on me if it was a false finish and I didn't kick out. That referee's got to count. Why? Because we're not making a joke out of what we did.
Exactly.
There's thousands of people know how to count to three, and they know whether that count should have been three or did the referee stop after two. No good. Doesn't happen.
Yeah.
Doesn't happen. And that was part of our that was ingrained in us. Okay? And shame on you if you didn't protect your product and the guy you were working with protect his product and make it as believable as you could. Scott's absolutely right. That you needed everybody to get over, but our little area of business was right inside that ring, and that's what we had to worry about.
Nikki.
Yes, sir.
All right. Let's talk about that. You know, all these moving parts that make a match what it is. You know, whether these moving parts get a match over or whether they fail to mesh up in that cog in the wheel. There are matches that are classic and we remember them like they were yesterday, and there are matches that are completely forgettable. Most of the matches today are completely forgettable. Why do we remember matches from 20, 30 years ago, Nikki?
Because it was important to us. And as we were explaining throughout this show, when you made it real, when you made it believable, people still talk about things 50 years ago. And they'll remember the day because such and such Bruno was beaten by Koloff. And it was like, oh my God, we hated that day. But then Bruno got the belt back when he beat Stasiak. We loved that day. I can't sit down and tell you anything about Hulk Hogan except the night he beat the Sheik, which to me was the day the music died. It's not to knock anybody, but it was the changing of the guard. But when you go before that, people can sit down and not just nuts like me and rattle off tag team championship changes. That was huge. Just the tag title, that meant a lot. And getting back to the referees, Dick Worley, Dick Kroll, when they worked matches, man, I mean, Dick Worley was as much a part of the match as the two men.
Well, I'll tell you what, my friend. You know, Dan likes to do every week what he calls his Mount Rushmore of wrestling. You can't have a Mount Rushmore of wrestling without Dick Worley.
Right.
That man epitomized the essence. He was the quintessential perfect wrestling referee. Perfect. He was the perfect ref.
He revealed to me one time, he said, you know, I used to carry a gun. He said, because I got so much heat because I missed the tag, because the face got beat, they blamed me and wanted to take it out on me. He said, I used to have to carry a gun.
Yeah, he was the best. He was the best I ever ran across. I mean, I'm partial because he and I were so close. He was like a father figure to me. But
I used to run into Dick all the time, actually, at the shopping mall. In the interest of full disclosure, Dick Worley lived literally less than 10 minutes away in Deptford, New Jersey.
Yeah, he hung out at the Deptford Mall because he wanted to get recognized. Yeah, we got it.
No, he used, believe it or not,
and
there was a place there that used to make, honestly, there was a place there that used to make his shoes for him, his ring shoes.
Yep.
It was called The Athlete's Foot. That was the name of the store. They made custom footwear for professional athletes. It was
when I saw Dick's shoes, I used to say to him, well, yeah, did they make them in men's sizes so I could have one? But
very good.
Exactly.
And what was his license plate?
Dick was a small guy. He was a little guy.
What was his license plate? Anybody know?
TV ref.
TV ref. There you go. That was it. Because Dick had another job besides the wrestling ref job. But yeah, and he was a boxer. And you know, Nikolai went into boxing for a while.
Yep.
Back in
and very good at it too.
He was very.
He was Dick Worley was the. Oh, of course. Go ahead.
But see, Dick Worley said Nikolai didn't have the killer instinct. He said he's too nice a guy. He said he's great for wrestling, but boxing, he wasn't going to do it. So
that's right.
I tried my ass off with him. He said, but he wasn't going to make it with the boxing.
The reason I think, you know, you talk about the size of the referees and stuff. The reason most of them were small because back, 30, 40 years ago, a lot of the wrestlers weren't that big.
Right.
There were some that were. But everything's psychological. Okay, you're in the ring and, wow, look at the referee and look at the size of these two guys.
I will vouch for that. Scott, I will vouch for that from personal experience. My first job in wrestling, I mean, after, I learned how to set the ring up and everything. My very first paid job in wrestling was I was a referee. I trained at Larry Sharp's Monster Factory. Larry was a very, very dear friend of mine, and became my mentor. But I'm 5'3", if anybody cares. And at the time I weighed maybe $125. And I made guys that were 5'8", 5'9" look like giants because I was just so small.
Right. Absolutely right.
And that's why I was good as a ref, and I loved being a ref. And then I got stupid and bought a damn promotion.
Yeah, there's so many old timers that taught me little bits and pieces like that, and they hang with you. You remember what they're saying, and it never occurred to me that, the referee's smaller and the guys are big. They did it to put them over, and it worked. I remember there used to be a referee. Ricky Morton's father, Paul Morton, was a referee.
Oh God, yeah.
We called him Baldy all the time. And I used to mess with him in the ring. After I knew what the hell I was doing, I'd get in there and he'd go to count on me, and I'd slap him on top of his head. And God damn it, I'll get out of the ring, I'll kill your ass. I get you. He was from the South. But and I said, Ricky, are you sure that's your dad? He said,
yeah, that's right.
I'll tell you what, no, Ricky's father was a hell of a referee, brother.
Oh,
he was a hell of a ref.
Yes, he was. And I respected the hell out of it. And I used to tell him, I'm sorry I fucked with you. And he said, that's okay. He said, I enjoyed it too, But just like Angelo Martinelli, I mentioned him a couple of times. He was from Charlotte. Yeah. And if you were going to do something wrong, he'd say, kid, get up. Okay, start your comeback, blah, blah, blah. And it's like the heels would say the same thing back then. It was Frank Morrell, an old-time wrestler. And I remember I messed up a high spot. You'd have thought I killed the president. I'm going to give you a fucking finish. Now, Frank was like 6'1" and about 260, And he says, if you fuck it up, I'm going to break your arm. Honest to God, it was like a drop down, hip toss, arm drag, drop down again, go over the top rope, come back in the ring, hit me, boom, I'll hit you back. Now, how the fuck are you supposed to remember all that? But I did. I didn't want to get my arm broken, and it scared the
That's
shit out
right.
of me. But they would do that. They would do that. They would say, look, listen to what I've got to say. Pay attention. If you fuck it up.
You had great motivation.
Oh, fuck. But, and it was what a learning it was,
Yeah.
And I missed the guys and things they did.
Well,
like that, but it helped you because they knew you were young and you were green and they knew you had potential. And they wanted to make it was a good match.
As long as you had a good attitude. Yeah. As long as you had a good attitude.
Mm-hmm.
And Scott, how many times did you say to a new kid, okay, just slow down and listen to me.
Exactly.
Just listen to me. There you go.
And
everything will be fine.
Out of all of this mess that we're talking about now, and I learned it from Frank, he said, when you have a match and you put this guy over, or this guy puts you over, you tell him, whisper in his ear, thank you.
Thank you.
And the reason, and I learned that, and I said that to everybody that I wrestled.
Me too.
And even in New York, when I very seldom got to win, but when I did that. But it was just, it was respect. It was respect of the man that was in there doing it because you can't get in there and wrestle yourself, right?
Yeah.
But,
well, Dan, why don't I give you the final round of questions and we can go around and we'll say goodnight to everybody. I will get these gentlemen to bed at a decent time tonight.
Well, the last question I have, we touched on it a bunch tonight, was the respect for the business and keeping kayfabe and all that. I'm curious, as a fan of that era, how did it go about the story you were telling with getting pulled over and Terry Funk in the back seat and all that. How did it go about going from territory to territory as heel face? Obviously, you would not go to the same diner or the same restaurant or whatever, but in another territory where no one's ever seen you before, you two could be holding hands walking down the street and nobody would know. So
yeah, but we still wouldn't interact with each other.
So
not in public.
You kept kayfabe even in an area where you know, like if you were to go from one territory to another, you still took separate cars, you still took separate floors in the hotel.
Well,
all that.
Like if Scott and I went from Amarillo and went and worked for Watts in Oklahoma, you know, we might ride together if we knew the layout of the territory would allow us to not be seen. You know, plenty of times you stop the car blocks away, and one guy walks in. All right, so nobody saw us, and you know, you didn't walk around together if you were a heel and a baby, because you don't know when you're going to work with each other, and people have memories. And if somebody sees Scott and I having dinner together someplace in a new territory, and then they watch us working on TV with one another, that kills it. No good. So we did not allow that stuff to happen. You know,
or you could do what the Freebirds used to do and park your car at the police station and have the cops drop you off the arena.
Well, you had to do that I had to do that in New York a couple of times.
Fans were slashing the tires of the Freebirds car. That's why.
Well, yeah, but you know, we protected it all the time. When we were away when we were out of sight of the public, we could get together. We could get together if it was at somebody's house or, you know, but we were even careful in the hotels. Yeah. You know, you just had it was just like Scott said, that was ingrained in us. And if you're not going to protect that, you know what? You're not going to make it here.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Hit the road, kid. You're right. Absolutely.
That's right. That's right.
Now, Nikita, you came in at the tail end of it, right? And so by the time you were in, kayfabe was kind of almost on its way out, and the territories were dwindling rapidly.
Yes.
But yet, in that interim time period, you learned an awful lot about, you know, old school wrestling, largely because of the people who taught you.
Absolutely.
What's the single? And here's something I've never asked, and you and I have talked a lot, and you've been on the show a few times, but I've never asked you this. What's the one piece, if of all the pieces of advice that you've been given or heard, what's the one piece of advice that even today has stayed with you?
To listen.
Watch the matches.
Listen. The guys that are there before you, they're there for a reason. Listen to them. If you walk in and act like an ass and try to pretend, you're going to end up on your ass, and people are going to just put a foot in your ass. Listen, shut the mouth, open the ears, and listen. People aren't trying to hurt you, they're trying to help you.
Hear, hear.
Yeah.
How about you, Scott? What was the best piece of advice you got?
From Lou Thez, watch the matches, respect the people you're working with, and do the best of your ability. That's what he told me, and I never forgot it. You know, if you respect what you did, it's like I said, you work too goddamn hard to get in the business.
Exactly.
And not show respect for it. You know, I mean.
You know what, Scott, and you just put your finger on something, Scott. Casey, I'm going to tell you what, brother. You're like, you know, I'm going to call you the elder statesman over here.
Oh, good.
3 days older.
Because you just put your finger on something that people just don't get now. They don't understand how hard you work to get into business. I think the problem is these kids don't have to work hard to get in business.
Exactly.
They don't have to pay their dues, Nikki.
No, they pay their money
Good story.
to go to some bullshit
I got a good
school,
story.
and then somebody gives them a match.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
Good
Exactly.
story.
You didn't get
Wanna
in the
hear a
door.
really-
You didn't get in the door like that years ago. Just by saying, "Here, I'm going to lay my money down. Now you're going to put me on your shows because I'm selling 25 tickets."
Yeah.
What the hell it is?
You know,
It's bullshit.
yeah, I'm going to give you a pocket full of money, so you're going to put me on TV. You know?
Yeah. I got a good
Crazy.
story for you
Go ahead.
about getting in the business. My first match was on TV with Dick Murdoch. Now we're in the back, and Dory Funk Sr.
Oh, my
was
God.
still alive. God rest his soul. And he said, and Terry was in there, and Junior was in there. He said, all right, here's what I want you to do. Now, Dick, I want you to hard way. Now, anybody that doesn't know what a hard way is, that's a shoot punch. Not
Oh, we
shoot
know
out.
what a hard way
He
is.
said, I want you to hit him right in the fucking eye, okay?
Oh,
You know, and I'd have done anything. I said, okay. So we get in the match, and Murdoch said, all right, here it comes. And bam, he knocked the shit out of me. Nothing. Did not bruise, did not blossom up, nothing. Hit me again, boom. Finally, we finished the match. We get back, and as I'm talking to you, this fucking happened. I swear to God. Get back in there, my eyes sore, you know, and kind of red a little bit. And Dory Funk Sr. said, Murdoch, you motherfucker, why can't you do what I asked you to do?
Oh,
I said,
Jesus.
"Look." He got this big ring on his finger, and I said, wait a minute, if you're going to hit me again, take that fucking ring off.
Yeah.
So he did. Now, you got to picture this. I'm standing there, Senior's in front of me, Murdoch's next to him, and Terry's next to him. And Terry and Murdoch are kind of laughing. And Senior hauls back, and he hit me so fucking hard. I mean, it blossomed up. It was bleeding where he caught me, and it closed my eye, knocked me on my ass. And Lord Al Hayes was there. And when I got to New York,
Oh,
he
my
said, I
God.
got to tell you a story. I said, what happened? He said, remember when Senior hit you? I said, yeah. Senior was this was the way he thought. When he hit me, he caromed off me, hit Murdoch, and hit Terry. And we were laughing, and Junior and I, I said, Junior and I laughed our ass off. But that's the way it was. You either did it their way or go put your clothes on and get out of the building.
Yeah, get your
Yeah,
bag.
exactly.
And maybe you didn't even get a chance to get dressed.
Can
Maybe-
you imagine having to stand there and have some big motherfucker hit you in the eye because that was what they wanted?
You want to be a wrestler, kid. There you go.
There you go.
Absolutely.
Exactly.
I'd have eat shit and bark at the moon to be a wrestler.
That's exactly right.
I love it.
Exactly right. Davey, so let's finish out with you, brother. What was the best piece of advice you ever got?
Well, I think it's basically the same. You actually didn't have to get specific advice because you were the old timers. You just followed by example. You saw how they respected the business. You saw how they performed every night. They also respected the people that bought the tickets, okay? So you did that. And like Luthez said, work hard every night. There's no nights off. Leave it all in the ring. Leave it all in the ring. And never make a joke out of what we do for a living.
Amen.
Amen.
I think that is very sound advice. We got some amazing advice for some young guys listening. David Yohanan says, take it serious. Nikita Breznikov says, listen. And Scott Casey says, remember to watch the matches.
That's big.
Watch the matches. Dan, we are going to wrap up another episode.
Always
So
a pleasure.
why don't you go around and see what all of our guests have to plug, and then we can say goodnight to everybody.
Okay. Scott, we'll start with you. You were obviously your book. Want to pitch that?
I'm sorry, this reception. What did you say about the book?
I was. We're
want you to
wrapping
plug
up.
your book.
Yeah, plug your book on our way out the door.
One Last Ride, Tale of Cowboy Scott Casey. And it's doing good. It could do better, obviously. But if anybody wants one, you can get a hold of Angelo, and he's got the number for you. And they can call me, and I'll autograph them, lick them, turn them sideways. It doesn't matter. But
and I will tell people, and Scott, I will tell people if they're interested in buying your book, they can purchase your book right through our website. There's a link right on the Wrestling with the Future website, and they can go right to our website and purchase the Scott Casey's book. It's called Scott Casey, One Last Ride.
And there's your exclusive. You heard him, Angelo. Use the code name Angelo, and Scott Casey will personally lick any book that you send him.
There you go.
Absolutely. Lick it, kiss it, it doesn't matter. Kind of like making love, you know. Whatever. Hey, Nicky, and it's been a pleasure talking to you guys, and maybe we'll see each other down the road.
Well, actually, Scott, you're going to see me in about 2 weeks.
Okay.
Okay.
Where's when and where?
You and Nick are coming on the show.
Oh, okay. All right. It's fun being old.
We had this conversation before we went on the air, and he fucking forgot already.
He took too many turnbuckles. That's a problem.
That's true.
Oh, he let Dory Funk Jr. hit him too much. Nicky, you got a book to promote, my friend.
Yes, when it was
real.
About the WWF in the 70s. And everything we talked about tonight, that's what it covers. Me as a fan, this is what this book is about, how it affected our lives. It was important.
Yep.
And this will tell you why it was important.
And I will personally vouch for this book. It is a great, great read. It's got awesome pictures in it. It's a great, great story. Our friend Scott Teal was the co-author on the book. Scott is a great guy. He's going to be with us. How many books has he written? 400 or 500?
Oh, over at least, yes.
At least that many.
And it's on his crowbarpress.com, CROWBIR, crowbarpress.com, and the Kindle version's on Amazon.
And thank you for promoting Crowbar. It's a great, great website. Oh, there's a ton of great material there. Davey O'Hannon, my dear friend.
Okay, I don't have anything to plug, but I'm going to tell you. Well, I'm going to tell you what. I don't have anything to plug. I'm buying Scott's book tomorrow for a couple of reasons. First is the respect I have for him, and he's the real deal for the professional wrestling business. So I'm buying Scott's book tomorrow. Also, Scott, if you get up into New Jersey, Angelo's got my contact information. You're always welcome at my house. Nick, I already read the book. When it was real, unbelievable. It's an emotional read for anybody that was a fan, which I was before I got into business. I want to thank you for the way you treated me in the book, the mention that you gave me. I'm flattered. I'm humbled. Probably don't deserve it, but I appreciate it.
Yes, you do, and that means the world to me, Davey. Thank you,
thank you.
Thank you.
But
thank you so much for all your compliments to me too, Davey. I really appreciate it. You know, the older we get, the more we learn to appreciate things.
Well, I mean it, Scotty. It was a treat to work with you. It was a thrill to work with you. And you blew me up in Colorado Springs on my first night, just so you know. Holy crap. But anyway, thank you, Angelo.
Always welcome, my friend, always.
And, being with you guys on the show is a special treat. And, I want to make myself available whenever you need me. If you think it'll be a help to have me there, you just say the word.
Well, I call upon you frequently. You are, and I've said this to you privately, and I'll say it publicly, you are my go-to guy, and I will tell people Davey O'Hannon has never told me no. I love this guy. He's a friend. He's literally a friend and neighbor. He's only about 30 minutes away. so I can go to his house and crash on his sofa and then hit the casinos with he and his wife.
Beautiful. Beautiful.
Well, I was on the beach. I was on the beach all day today, so you wouldn't have found
Okay. There you
me.
go.
Hey,
It's nice to
I
live
just wanna
5
say-
minutes from the beach. He literally lives 5 minutes from the beach.
Yep.
Right.
Nikki,
Go ahead,
you're
Scott.
welcome here
Dan.
anytime. You have a home here,
Thank you.
Hey.
Yes.
and
Thank
and
you,
of
Dan.
course,
Thank you, Ann. Yes.
Dan, you're welcome back too next week.
Oh, thank God. Okay.
Gee, Dan, don't you feel better now? Yeah.
Hey, he got the gig. He's going to stay for a while.
Davey,
Great.
please say hi to Dominic. I know you talked to him. Please.
I'll
Give
be
him my
talking to
best.
Dominic tomorrow morning.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I'll be
and
talking
we
to
may
him.
have a big announcement coming up about that. So, but we're gonna keep hush on a few things till we get squared away.
Very good. Well, thank you again, Scott. A thrill for me speaking to you and reconnecting, and hopefully we'll get to see each other in person soon. Dan and Angelo, thank you for
Quite
having
welcome.
me here, and
Thank you.
Nick, you know how I feel about you, and
The
it's a
same,
treat to
brother.
be with you guys.
Thank you.
So right now, I'm going to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, me too.
I'm home. Yes, yes.
All right,
you
guys.
again,
Take
God
guys.
bless. God bless.
I'll be
everyone.
glad
Thank you,
to help
gentlemen.
anytime.
Thank you,
Take care.
Davey.
Okay, guys. Take care.
Be
Yeah.
careful out there.
That's what
We will.
All right. Bye-bye.
Davey O'Hannon. I'll tell you what, he's a great guy. He's a great guy.
Absolutely. What a hell
Well,
of a show.
I'll tell you what, brother, that was a hell of a show.
I know we say that a lot, but this was a hell of a show. I mean,
Great
we
show.
2 hours and we got through 5% of the stories those guys have to tell.
Oh my
We
God. And here's the thing, and I love about doing this kind of show. And, in case you haven't guessed by now, Dan, anything and everything can happen here because we go live. Even though we go live to tape, we're live, you and I.
Yeah, of course.
And we never know who's going to pop in. I knew Davey O'Hannon was going to surprise Scott Casey.
Mm-hmm.
It was a surprise to me, however, when NIKITA BREZNIKOV popped in.
It's awesome.
And I loved it. I said, yeah, I'm going to chime you in right now, brother.
Well,
But what he did was he called me on the phone.
Right.
You can't see my phone because, here it is. Now you can see.
Yeah, there you go.
I got to hold it up against my shirt to see it. That's funny. But he said, do you want me tonight? I went, hell yeah.
Yeah,
Who
that's.
the hell doesn't want NIKITA BREZNIKOV? Are you kidding me?
I think it's great.
Absolutely.
I think it's great too because you got three guys who, by their own admission, hadn't spoken in years, in some cases 20 years to each other, and 2 minutes talking about the old days, and you would have sworn those three guys hang out every Tuesday.
I know. And that's amazing. You don't see that kind of camaraderie though.
No,
with guys now.
That's a really good point. You look at the wrestlers today, and Jim Cornette was telling a story, one of his last shows, and we've had a couple of guys mention that on that have come on this show, where they'll go into the locker room and every guy in the back's on their phone, on their iPad, on their tablet, whatever. Yeah. Nobody's sharing Polaroids of the arena rats. Nobody's telling stories, bullshitting, playing dice, nothing. Everybody's on their phone. A day after the show is over, you forgot who you worked with.
Dan, before all this Corona crap hit, when I was going to local shows, because we have an association with a promotion here.
Okay.
I walk in the locker room, and this is what you see. The heads are down.
Yeah.
The fingers are. This is what you see. It's like, are you kidding me? Really?
Yeah.
Like, Hulk Hogan could walk into that locker room. Nobody would ever know it.
Nobody would care, yeah.
Ric Flair could walk into that locker room. No one would know it.
Yep.
Because not a single head comes up. They're all down like this. Like, really? That's crazy. All right, brother. Well, listen. give everybody our plugs. Tell them where we can find us, and then I'll give some announcements for next week.
Sounds good. I mean, obviously, we're on YouTube and Facebook, and we have our private Facebook, the Wrestling with the Future podcast. We're on Instagram, Wrestling with the Future. We're on Twitter at Wrestling Future, no G, Wrestling Future. Yep. And you and I both have our own Twitters. I'm at @theman_WWTF, and yours is Psychic Angelo.
Yep, sure is.
And like I said, for anybody watching out in YouTube land, don't forget to like, share, subscribe, buy the T-shirt.
Yes. We have a special 3 large shirts for $20.
There you go.
Also, we're brand new on Instagram, but we are at Wrestling with the Future on Instagram.
Yes, sir.
And of course, as Dan said, on Facebook, we have a public page and a private group. We were going to consolidate them, but I think we're going to keep them both separate, Dan.
Okay.
So we're going to keep that private group private and the public page for other people, because you get additional content on the private group that you don't get in the public page.
Yeah, it's a public forum and then an active fan page.
Yeah, but we get the juicy stuff in the private group. We don't share that with the public. But now, so Thursday night, we have Baby Doll joining us.
Yes, sir.
We'll be here. Baby Doll will be joining us, talking about anything that comes to her mind. Next week, a big week next week. Mike Williams is back next week. The Sage of Quay guy is going to talk about Paul is Dead, the Paul McCartney conspiracy. And the most controversial man in pro wrestling will join him, Vince Russo. Will be here finally on Wrestling with the Future. And then I'm going to show him how you do a podcast.
You go for it. Of course, you got to book Vince Russo on my one day off, but you know, who's beggars can't be choosers, right?
I gave you the heads up. I said, look, you know, ditch the birthday, ditch the wife for the night. You know? Man,
yeah, I asked. You know how it goes. I went to management, and my request was denied. So
I know. Well, you put in the requisition for it. Your requisition was denied. That's it. Okay. So for Dan the Man, I'm Psychic Me DiMangelo. Join us as always every Tuesday and Thursday. We are Wrestling with the Future. Take care and happy wrestling, everybody.